Imagine being sentenced to life behind bars. But the real danger starts the moment you step inside. What happens when your own family turns against you? This is not just a gang war, it's betrayal at its deepest level. Ksoo's story is a raw, brutal battle for survival inside prison walls, where enemies lurk in every corner and trust can cost you your life. Stay with me, because what unfolds next will shock you and reveal how far the street's violence really reaches. The jury found Ksoo guilty of first-degree murder, just like the indictment said. But no one really saw what was coming next. This verdict might have been a death sentence for him. Within hours of arriving at prison, rumors started swirling that things turned violent for Ksoo. Word is, KTA finally got their payback. Let me explain what's going on. When someone from the streets enters prison, the drama follows. Right now, people are saying Ksoo's already been attacked inside. And honestly, that would not be surprising. The guy has enemies everywhere, almost everyone has a problem with him. His conviction came for the 2020 shooting death of 23-year-old Charles "Lil Buck" McCormack Jr., and it was first-degree murder, which means life in prison, no parole, no second chances. But what really shocked people wasn't just the guilty verdict, it was when Ksoo's own father, Abdul Robinson Sr., took the stand and pointed fingers at his son. When the prosecutor asked if he was snitching on his own child, the courtroom fell silent. His simple answer, "Yes," hit the room like a thunderclap. This wasn't just some street beef or gang rivalry. This was family turning against family. Everyone in that courtroom could feel the weight of betrayal. Now, for those who don't know the deep roots of the Jacksonville drill scene, here's some background. The murder came from a long-standing gang war between a TKAC's top killers and 6 Block. This wasn't some small neighborhood fight. People were dying, families were breaking apart, and entire bloodlines were being destroyed over respect, revenge, and territory. The fight ignited when Lil Buck dropped a diss track targeting Ksoo's late stepbrother, Willie, also known as Boss Goon Addison. Where some see rap beef as just music, here it means life or death. Talking about a dead man with family still alive is like marking yourself for a hit. Now, for the legal folks watching, the prosecution's case wasn't very strong. Witnesses described the shooter as a slim person around 5 feet 8, but Ksoo is stocky and 6'3". They never found the murder weapon, and phone records didn't put Ksoo at the scene for sure. That should have been enough for reasonable doubt. Any good lawyer could have used that to win. But then Ksoo's father stepped in and everything changed. Abdul Robinson Sr. was also in trouble. Arrested in September 2020, he was charged with helping his son's crew escape after the shooting. He was also linked to another serious crime, paying someone to kill a target. But instead, an innocent man named David Rothermall was killed by mistake. The father was facing decades in prison, but the state gave him a deal. Snitch on your son and you walk free with time served. For Ksoo, a well-known gang figure, whose crimes and disses were all over the news and music, walking into prison was like walking into a war zone. With a giant target on his back, correction officers might handle the day-to-day rules and paperwork. But inside prison, it's the inmates who run the social game. This world is built on respect, reputation, and the willingness to stand your ground when someone challenges you. Let me break down how this really works. It is nothing like what you see in the movies. The truth is way more strategic, political, and dangerous. When a high-profile inmate, like Ksoo, arrives, the news spreads faster than gossip in a barbershop. Within hours, everyone in the prison knows who he is, what he did, and who's out to get him. Take the case of Money Sign Suede. For example, he was a 22-year-old Mexican-American rapper from Los Angeles who was fatally stabbed in a prison shower in Ciudad, California, on April 25, 2023. His lawyer, Nicholas Rosenberg, said Money Sign was attacked in the neck, and the incident was treated as a homicide. Now, Money Sign wasn't caught up in the same intense street politics as Ksoo, but he still faced deadly trouble behind bars, serving a 32-month sentence for gun charges. Money Sign had already been attacked before, showing his problems inside prison were growing. Rumors said his murder might have been connected to gang politics or extortion, some saying he refused to pay taxes or follow prison gang rules, while the full story isn't confirmed. This case shows how prison politics work. Ignore the rules, disrespect the hierarchy, or skip payments, and the consequences can be swift and deadly. For Ksoo, it was even more complicated. He already had active enemies locked up in prison, waiting for their chance. prison is full of rivals biding their time, and Ksoo's conviction made him an easy target. Footage of another rapper, King Von Thies, gives a clear picture of how dangerous prison life can be for high-profile gang members. On February 9, 2016, Sergeant Crumpstar interviewed inmate Devin Bennett. In a 2016 video, Von is seen in a heated fight with another inmate that got so bad, guards had to use mace to stop it. When questioned afterward, Von stuck to the usual prison code: no snitching, even when you're hurt. Later footage from November 2017 shows Von talking to officers about his safety and asking for protective custody because of his sexual orientation. This video, which leaked in July 2023, shows even the toughest street guys sometimes have to protect themselves in ways that might make them seem weak to others. Another clip shows Von fighting with a rival named 051 Freaky. Von slipped out of his handcuffs and landed some punches before guards broke it up. The fight reportedly started over a tattoo, disrespecting Lele Capone, showing how prison violence often stems from old street grudges. These incidents with King Von paint a clear picture of the harsh reality Ksoo faced. In prison, old beefs never die, disrespect lasts forever, and one wrong move can lead to serious violence. For someone like Ksoo, who built his reputation on disrespecting his enemies and bragging about violence, prison was a non-stop danger zone. The mental stress of stepping into that world is hard to imagine. Back in December 2024, there were reports that Ksoo was being mistreated in Duval County Jail, claims that he was mentally abused, kept in the psych ward with unstable inmates, and cut off from proper contact with his lawyers. His attorney, Chris Dust, worried that these isolation tactics were being used to weaken Ksoo before his trial. And if things were that bad in jail, imagine how much worse state prison would be, where guards have less control, and inmates have more freedom to settle scores. On top of all that, Ksoo was carrying the heavy burden of knowing his own father had betrayed him in court. The constant threats and need to always stay alert would crush anyone's spirit. Look at Casanova's case to see how fast things can spiral out of control for well-known gang members behind bars. While waiting for trial at Essex County Detention Center, Casanova fought with Ulysses Lugo, a member of his own gang. Those fights got brutal. Both men had their faces cut with razors, and other inmates later attacked Lugo, likely on Casanova's orders. What makes Casanova's story relevant is that he spoke out against his own gang, making him a target. Ksoo hadn't publicly turned on ATK, but his father's testimony against him was a form of family betrayal that left him exposed from all sides. Prison gangs in Florida are especially ruthless, divided by geography, race, and criminal ties, all fighting for control and respect. For an ATK member like Ksoo, arriving there meant being labeled right away and having to deal with groups that might see him as useful or as a threat. Ksoo's street violence created enemies far beyond Jacksonville. The war between ATK and its rivals has been tied to many murders since 2017, building a web of grudges that could flare up anywhere. But it was his father's courtroom testimony that sealed Ksoo's fate. When asked why he would betray his own son, Ksoo's father gave an answer that even hardened men in the courtroom felt. He said, "I got some health issues. I got to." For those who don't know the system, here's what that really meant. He wasn't just talking about being sick or missing his kids. He was explaining why he was about to break the biggest rule in street culture: never, under any circumstances, snitch on your own family. He shared how his daughter asks when he'll take her to the daddy-daughter dance, and how he's been letting her down. This hit deep because it showed the real struggle behind his choice. He was torn between his adult son, already deep in the game, and his little kids who still had a chance for a normal life. "My 6-year-old son asks me to come to his football games, to go fishing. He asks, 'When will you come see me?' He begs, 'Please, Daddy, please come see me. Teach me the game, but don't know where I am.'" Here was a man caught between loyalty to the streets and love for his innocent children. And the streets left him no way to have both. But it wasn't just about the kids. He was fighting serious health problems too. "I have diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure." This man was literally dying, and the state used his poor health as pressure to make him turn on his own son. The plea deal was harsh but simple: testify against Ksoo and get a reduced sentence of 76 months, most of which he had already served, meaning he could walk free in less than a year and spend his last days with his younger children. Without the deal, Ksoo's father faced up to 60 years behind bars for his role in both the McCormick and Rothermel cases. The personal price he paid for cooperating was immediate and heartbreaking. When asked how snitching affected his family, his answer showed just how much his world had fallen apart. "I really don't have no more relationship with my family, completely cut out," he said. "In the hood, family is everything. Betray your own blood, and you don't just lose that bond, you lose your identity, your support system, your whole reason for living." This man had essentially committed social suicide to save his own life and hold on to a connection with his younger kids. But the fallout went far beyond family drama. When asked how snitching would impact his life, both inside and outside prison, his response revealed the danger he was in. "Extremely hard. Something that's easy for you to do. The hardest decision I ever made, real talk." He knew that testifying against his son would make him a marked man for life. In prison, snitches get dealt with. On the streets, snitches get dealt with, and snitch on your own family in a high-profile gang murder case, and you become a target. That never goes away. The date January 15th held deep meaning for Ksoo's family. It was the day Lil Buck got involved in the beef, a cycle of violence that started long before the murder of Willie Bosgoon Addison on January 15, 2019. Set off the chain of events leading to Lil Buck's death exactly 1 year later. Willie was shot outside a club that night, and Ksoo's father, brother, and cousin were all wounded too. His father's story of that night painted a picture of a family shattered by street violence. Imagine driving your dying son to the hospital while you're bleeding out yourself, listening to his last breaths. That trauma changes a man forever and explains why revenge consumed this family. The damage was severe and lasting. Ksoo's brother was shot in the head and spent months in the hospital relearning how to walk and talk. The shooting left him angry and changed his moods. Another family member was shot 7 times and left paralyzed. Ksoo wasn't in the car that night but was living with the family. The shooting made him angry, like everyone else. That anger, prosecutors said, pushed him to retaliate against Lil Buck for dissing Willie in his music. The most heartbreaking moment in court came when Ksoo's father identified his own son as the shooter in dashcam footage. "I know my kids," he said. This matched a 2023 deposition where he first agreed to testify after seeing the footage, but his cooperation went further. He admitted helping to others, ATK, Scotty, and Butter escape after the shooting, picking them up from a woman's house. After a police chase and crash, he also burned their clothes worn during the crime, making himself an accessory. The defense fought hard to discredit him. Ksoo's lawyer, Christopher Dust, called him desperate, suggesting his testimony was bought with a deal, but during closing, Assistant State Attorney Joel Cooper made it clear the state's case wasn't only based on the father's word. They had DNA, fingerprints, social media posts, and more. Despite the defense's attempts to poke holes in the story and highlight weak physical evidence, the jury didn't buy it. On July 31, 2025, after just 3.5 hours, they returned their verdict on the 4th Judicial Circuit Court of Duval County, Florida, case number 16202, OCF 361B. The jury found Hockey Robinson guilty of first-degree murder, as charged. When the verdict was read, you could see Ksoo's entire world fall apart. Without the deal, Ksoo's father faced up to 60 years in prison for his involvement in both the McCormick and Rothermel cases. The cost of cooperating was immediate and painful. When asked how snitching affected his family, his answer showed just how much his world had shattered. "I really don't have no more relationship with my family, they completely cut me out," he said. "In the hood, family means everything. Betray your own blood, and you don't just lose that bond, you lose your identity, your support, your reason for living." This man had basically committed social suicide to save his own life and keep a connection with his younger kids. But the fallout went far beyond family pain. When asked how snitching would affect his life inside and outside prison, he said it was the hardest decision he'd ever made. "It's extremely hard. Something easy for you, but the hardest thing for me. Real talk." He knew testifying against his own son would make him a target for life. In prison, snitches get punished. On the streets, snitches get punished. And snitch on your own family in a high-profile gang murder case, and you become a target that never disappears. January 15th was a date full of meaning for Ksoo's family. That was the day Lil Buck became involved in a deadly cycle of violence that began long before Willie Bosgoon Addison was murdered on January 15, 2019, triggering a chain of events that led to Lil Buck's death exactly 1 year later. Willie was shot outside a club that night, and Ksoo's father, brother, and cousin were all injured too. His father's account painted a family torn apart by violence. Imagine driving your dying son to the hospital while you're bleeding yourself, listening to his last breaths. That kind of trauma changes a person forever, and explains why revenge took over this family. The damage was deep and lasting. Ksoo's brother was shot in the head and spent months relearning how to walk and talk. The shooting left him angry and changed his moods. Another family member was shot 7 times and left paralyzed. Ksoo wasn't in the car that night but lived with the family. The shooting made him angry, like everyone else. Prosecutors say that anger drove him to retaliate against Lil Buck for dissing Willie in his music. The most painful courtroom moment came when Ksoo's father identified his own son as the shooter on dashcam footage. "I know my kids," he said. This matched his 2023 testimony after watching the same video. But he didn't just point out the shooter. He admitted helping to others, ATK, Scotty, and Butter, escape after the shooting by picking them up from a woman's home following a police chase and crash. He also burned their clothes worn during the crime, making himself an accessory. The defense fought hard to discredit him. Ksoo's lawyer, Christopher Dust, called him desperate, saying the state bought his testimony with a deal. But Assistant State Attorney Joel Cooper made it clear in closing that the case wasn't just about the father's word. They had DNA, fingerprints, social media posts, and more. Despite the defense's attempts to poke holes and highlight weak evidence, the jury wasn't convinced. On July 31, 2025, after just 3.5 hours, they delivered their verdict. In the 4th Judicial Circuit Court of Duval County, Florida, Case No. 162020CF361B, the jury found Hockey Robinson guilty of first-degree murder as charged. When the verdict was read, you could see Ksoo's whole world collapse. When everything went down, the speed of the jury verdict spoke volumes. Scotty's jury took less than 2 hours to find him guilty on all counts. Ksoo's jury needed about 3.5 hours to decide. Shannon said that even though the case was complicated, the state did a good job preparing the jury for the wild stories, including killers confessing and family members snitching on each other. She mentioned the jury even asked for a family tree to understand all the relationships involved, showing just how deep this case went into Jacksonville's street politics. The legal impact of these convictions goes far beyond these 2 young men. Both face mandatory life sentences under Florida law. And Shannon predicted appeals were definitely coming. But she made it clear that filing appeals doesn't guarantee success. She pointed out possible reasons for appeal, like the complexity of having 2 different juries and possible evidence or jury tampering issues. She also said motions for ineffective assistance of counsel would probably be filed, which is common when trying to overturn murder convictions. State Attorney Melissa Nelson's statement after the verdict sent a clear message about how the justice system plans to handle gang violence moving forward. 5 years ago, Hockey Robinson and Leroy Whitaker tracked down a man and shot him in broad daylight, all over disputes tied to drill rap. Today, a jury made them answer for those bold crimes. This is the state showing it won't tolerate these street wars, but their legal approach also raises tough questions about how far prosecutors should go when using rap lyrics and social media posts as evidence. Using someone's art against them in court is controversial, especially in hip-hop, where exaggeration and storytelling are part of the culture. Still, when those lyrics and posts connect directly to real murder charges, everything changes. A clip allegedly showing YNRR Slug AT talking about attacking Ksoo in jail highlights the kinds of threats high-profile inmates face, whether that exact incident happened or not. It shows the reality. Ksoo's enemies weren't just on the streets, they were locked up too, waiting for a chance to catch him off guard. Going from a free man with power and protection to an inmate trapped in the system is a brutal shift. For Ksoo, it flipped the power upside down. On the streets, his gang gave him respect and safety. In prison, that same gang made him a target. Rivals wanted to hurt him to earn respect or settle old scores. Every moment inside, walking to chow, going to recreation, even sleeping was risky. Any routine move could lead to meeting someone who'd waited years for a chance to get at him. Like this video. Tap the card on your screen for more.